Hi, Jason. Thanks for helping my project. Could you say a little bit about yourself?
So, hi, I'm Jason. I'm a software engineer and I live in York, which is in the north of England.
And obviously, you have an interest in space. I see the space shuttle with Hubble. I think it's deploying.
That is right. So those are some Lego sets my family bought me for Hanukkah and Christmas this year. So we've had a lot of fun building them. And I thought, when else do I get a chance to show them off? So I thought yes, we got, the space shuttle with Hubble and Saturn V. And they were both good fun kits to build.
Now, the interesting thing about the Saturn V is I also have that same set, but it has 1,969 pieces.
Yeah. I didn't know that. One of my friends pointed out after I built it. I thought that was really cool. It must take a lot of effort to make sure you have exactly.
Yeah, can you imagine? Oh, we got to create this special part because we got to merge it, or we need to break these up because we have to get to that number.
Yeah, they're beautiful. I love the books that come with them as well, that talk about the mission profiles and obviously the history of the design and things like that. So I thought they're really good, really nice kits.
So I also see a guitar behind you. Do you play?
You know what? No, they're purely wall decoration now. I seem to recall putting them up on the wall around the time I interviewed for my current job, which was 4 years ago, and I don't think they've come down since, which is very sad. It's just family life's gotten in the way.
That happens, I have a trombone from high school that I haven't really touched that much since the time I graduated. So.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
But
well, you've had a career change recently, so do you think you'll have more chance to do that kind of stuff now?
Well, actually, I was never really good at it, so I think it's better for all.
Fair enough. I'll trust you on that.
Yeah. So what are some of your hobbies and other interests?
So I'm, type A computer nerd. I like my science fiction. Obviously, I like building things, and I've sort of got an engineering mindset that goes from software to everything else. A lot of my time is spent obviously raising the little one now as well, which is a lot of fun but quite tiring and doesn't leave time for much else. So movies, films, the odd game here and there.
And how old is he now?
He's 4, so it's quite a fun time. And so when we were building these, it was quite fun to sort of get on YouTube and show them various launches and things like that. See them actually in action, and yeah.
And did he have any reaction to it? I mean, this idea of going to space, going to the moon is very difficult for adults to understand. What about it do you think
he sort of understands, obviously, the firework sort of style rocket, and he understands people float when they're in space. He understands that the moon's quite far away, and sometimes we get out the telescope and we look at it and you can see the craters and things like that. But I still don't think he's quite grasped that people walks on it. That sort of sense of perspective and size and where it is relative to us is, I suppose, quite hard for him to understand. But we'll get there.
And yeah, it's hard to imagine those things that we see in the sky actually be in places that we could go and visit.
Exactly. But,
well, I was just going to say, did you know that NASA is planning to send astronauts back to the moon for the first time since 1972?
Yes, so I'm sort of, I know that about the Artemis missions. I know roughly the mission profiles. I don't know it in depth, but I know that's the plan. Obviously, they're in the middle of, they're doing sort of final builds on the SLS, aren't they? Getting that ready for a launch, not this year anymore, but sometime soon. And I know that the plan is to obviously set up a space station between here and the moon so that we can make sort of slightly different mission profiles than what we did before. I know that they're intending to have a more diverse range of astronauts walk on the moon, which would be quite exciting. But that's roughly it. I don't really know what the science is beyond sort of a staging ground for Mars, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, about the SLS, the first test flight's supposed to be actually just in a matter of months. Originally supposed to be in February or maybe March, I think, and then it kind of got pushed out to May, June timeframe. But It's all stacked and ready to, almost ready to be rolled out to the launch pad and filled up and tested. So
Fantastic. Oh, that sounds
it,
very good. I didn't realize it was that soon.
it won't have anybody on it. It'll be
No,
just an uncrewed, you know, test of the vehicle around the moon and back.
I know there's lots of parts of it that obviously share similarities with the space shuttle. It's a space shuttle derivative craft, even though the shape's completely different. Is there that much difference that they need to sort of test it all out, or is it just because it's never gone that far before? Because of course the space shuttle was low Earth orbit only.
Well, yeah, it's, I mean, they're going in a capsule like they did with Apollo. So it'll be the Orion capsule. It's slightly, I mean, it holds 4 people instead of 3. So you won't have one person all by himself in orbit while the other 2 are on the surface. Um, um, but the other particulars of it, I mean, it won't have a lander. Instead, it'll meet up with a lander that'll be already kind of pre-positioned around the moon. And they've contracted with SpaceX to build the lander. So the Orion capsule is considerably smaller than a Starship. So you'll have kind of like a small capsule meeting with like this huge ship that then takes them to the moon and back up. So that's going to be an interesting.
I kind of, in my head, thought that the Orion would dock with the Lunar Gateway and the lander would be at the Lunar Gateway. So is it actually, it's sort of, you still have to get into lunar orbit and then you can land?
Well, the Lunar Gateway will be in orbit around the moon, a really big orbit. Actually, it's, I think, an orbit. It's not exactly around the moon, I don't think, but it is. The original plan was for it to dock with Orion and, you know, have the lander already at the gateway. But, you know, whenever we're really pushing towards that 2024 date and it looked like the gateway may take a little bit longer, they're like, well, you don't actually need the gateway to dock with the lander. You could just dock directly. But now that the whole thing's taking a little bit longer, the gateway may be there and it'll probably turn out just like that anyway.
I suppose flexibility is always important with these big engineering projects. You know?
Yeah, it can be. I think one thing is every time you make a change, understand the implication of those changes are a little bit difficult. You know, or you're depending upon gateway to like power Orion, right, while you're down on the moon or something like that, you know.
Yeah, that's true.
But what do you think about us going back to the moon? You seem positive, but is there like anything particular that excites you about it?
Well, obviously, you know, I haven't seen it in my lifetime. You know, I've seen, you know, people in low Earth orbits, and obviously the great excitement in the last decade when we had Major Tim Peake, who was the first British astronaut under a British flag up on the space station, which was very exciting. But I've never sort of, you know, been able to connect directly with the moon, obviously, apart from the excellent films that have come out about it since. And I've been very much enjoying For All Mankind on Apple TV, sort of, you know, reimagining what the world would have been like if the Apollo program had carried on. But yeah, I mean, that's the type of connection to it. I know in my head that obviously humanity can't last on Earth forever. At some point, either we leave or we die, type of thing. And, you know, no time like the present, start planning for the future. So sort of mad exploration of the solar system seems pretty important. I don't know how much science we get out of it that we can't get out of autonomous craft anymore, other than how well humans can adapt to these conditions. So it's mixed. Obviously, I like big rockets. I like seeing people walk and bounce and things like that. Whether that money is better spent on unmanned space exploration, I don't know.
Yeah, I was watching a presentation by Elon Musk just last week, a kind of an update on his rocket project. And one of the things he pointed out was the amount of the US budget spent on NASA is actually 0.36% of the budget. So he's like, you know, it's really not that much. You know?
No, it's just the balance of, you know, what we spend that space exploration budget on, which of course was, I mean, the reason why we've only had Major Tim Peake as a British astronaut is because famously the British government refused to fund human spaceflight. And understandably, the European Space Agency said, well, if you're not paying for it, you're not having any astronauts, which is very understandable. But yeah, I think we've got to find out about this stuff, because we can't stay here forever. And how are we going to make it so that humans can live in these inhospitable, locations? We need to know.
It's interesting about what you said about the British government. The Canadian government is actually providing a Canadian arm, robotic arm for the Gateway. And one of the things they're getting in exchange for that is there's going to be a Canadian on that second Artemis flight around the moon. So it'll be the first Canadian to actually be out there.
I didn't know that. I visited the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum with a Canadian once. Obviously, they got very excited when they saw the Canadarm on. It's Discovery, isn't it? It is Discovery. That's at the Air and Space Museum. The Canadians are very. I hear it's on their money. The Canadarm. It's like a major celebrity.
Oh, is it?
yeah. You can literally find Canadian dollar notes with the Canadarm on them.
That's cool. It's kind of fascinating that Canada developed the Canadian arm. It's just like I wonder what down here led to them doing that. It just seems random.
It was first on the shuttle, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So, because obviously, there was a big international collaboration on the International Space Station, various different space agencies that contributed different bits. I suppose it was the start of that sort of. Oh no, actually, because there was some European Space Agency modules for the space shuttle as well, weren't there? Like the Space Lab.
Yeah, Space Lab, and I think a few other things too. But yeah.
So I suppose it was the start of that experimentation that led to obviously our crowning glory until it crashes back to Earth in the next decade, the International Space Station, which has demonstrated what the world can do when we all work together.
Yeah, and in fact, today's my first day of my new job working with the International Space Station. So I'm about an hour and a half away from my very first welcome on board meeting. So I'm excited about that.
Excellent. So are you shadowing to begin with, or is it straight in there, sort of?
There's quite a bit of training, a year and a half of training, testing, simulations, shadowing, mentorship. So it's supposed to be, I've heard it described as being like college or university.
Yeah, that's good. I'm sure you're very excited.
I am. Yeah, I went and bought all the learning supplies you need, flashcards.
Fresh pad of paper, colored pens.
Exactly.
Oh, that's good.
But Japan. I was going to say Japan is actually working on a rover for the moon, and they want one of their astronauts to be one of the first, part of that first trip to the moon. That would be kind of.
So how do these things get bashed out? Is it sort of, does NASA auction off the spaces based on the other projects that are going on, or is it political? Is it sort of, the ambassador says we have to help out Japan at this point, and therefore, how do these things get allocated?
I think it gets just negotiated. Countries want to do it. They're like, hey, we'll contribute this, and then they talk and make an agreement. I don't think the Japan situation is completely hammered out yet. I just heard something about that was the intent.
I heard at one point they were thinking about reusing modules from the International Space Station for Lunar Gateway as well. Is there any plans around that yet, or is it still sort of early stages?
I think that I don't think there's any plans to. There may be modules that were meant for the International Space Station that they might use for the Gateway, but the problem you have is that the International Space Station is not in the same plane as the moon, and so actually getting it's like it would be extremely logistically expensive to.
That's fair enough. Easier to build and launch into the right point.
Exactly. It'd probably be simpler to take modules from the International Space Station, bring them back down to Earth, and then relaunch them to the moon. And that would be the.
You think we should be recycling more these days, but I understand it's very difficult in space.
It is. Yeah, you have to go really, really fast to stay up in orbit. Yeah. In fact, that's one thing you might want to try teaching your son is that people don't float in space because there's no gravity. They float in space because they're constantly falling towards the Earth, which is an extremely difficult concept.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I
Um,
suppose that's why you sort of simulate it with the diving aeroplanes.
Yeah, I actually wrote on that one time.
Okay.
Yeah,
How's that?
It was very different than I thought. I always read in science fiction books how when you're in weightlessness, it's free fall, you feel like you're falling, but you have no sense of falling or anything. You just feel light and free, and you have no sense of down or up. I've only experienced for 30 seconds at a time. Obviously didn't want to extend it too long and hit the ground.
Yeah.
But in that 30 seconds, it felt I had no trouble at all.
See, in my head, it's sort of like I thought like a diving roller coaster or something like that, where you feel it in your stomach. So, okay.
So you know, the dive and roller coaster, though, you're actually experiencing G's in a downward direction because it's actually accelerating faster than the pull of gravity. And so your body is trying to stay up and the coaster is pulling you down.
Okay. Okay, so that's different.
Yeah. So whenever you think about the future of humanity, like 100 years from now, 200 years from now, what do you see?
Well, I suppose we've all been waiting on that dream since the 60s, haven't we? We all thought there'd be, lunar colonies. We thought, we'd start to have people out in the asteroid belt, and it sort of stuttered and stopped. So I think I hold on to the dream, even if obviously I think, obviously it's expensive, what's the need of having humans out there? It still sits there in the back of my mind, I suppose, from all the books I read as a child and things like that. Obviously, I've just finished all the Expanse books and the TV series as well. And, obviously a lot of that is about, politics and other things. But the idea of humans making use of full resources of our solar system is quite exciting. It's the next stage, and stop thinking ourselves as these little pockets on Earth, that is one big group.
And you said, pretty much you had a dream of us expanding out in space. And do you know where that dream came from? Was it some experience you had in your childhood, or what got you interested into space?
It's hard to remember. I have a fuzzy memory of my mother first sitting me down Star Trek The Next Generation or something like that when it finally arrived on the BBC. But I got to have been pretty young then, so probably too young to have actually watched it, and probably traumatized by the Borg, but not too much that I don't want humans to go out and look. I'm not sure. I suppose that's why I'm starting to build Lego rockets with Daniel. It's just to sort of tease that idea out from an early age, but I really don't remember what it was. And I remember when I was young, obviously I started building spaceships out of the Lego set, pieces I had and things like that, and imagining space colonies and things, and it's just stayed with me ever since. And obviously you just keep looking up.
That's awesome. Well, I mean, if it was safe and affordable, would you take a trip to space?
Yeah, it's funny because we talked about roller coasters earlier, and I was talking about that. My, I don't know, reaction to accelerations and was what isn't what it once was. When I was younger, I was an air cadet and we did do aerobatics and things like that, and I was fine. And as I've gotten older, just sort of the funkier stuff to do with aviation has kind of freaked me out a little bit more, and I don't know whether I could get over that again. I think I would. I think if the opportunity, somebody said you have a free ticket, and you can go up in, obviously, a Crew Dragon or one of Elon Musk's Blue Origin one, one of Bezos's New Origin ones. I would say yes. And obviously, I enjoyed seeing Rich Branson finally doing his dream, getting himself up there. So I think it's easy to say when it's hypothetical. I think I would. I don't know whether I'd need to go beyond low Earth orbit, but I think the people who want to go to the moon are very brave.
I don't know if it's the same with you, but my concept of risk changed a lot whenever I had children. Like, and the world became a very dangerous place, in the sense that I suddenly could see everything that could go wrong. Like I'm like anticipating, you know, I see a glass on a table, but in my mind's eye, that glass has already fallen on the ground, become a whole bunch of pieces. People have stepped on it, they've gotten cut, you know. So like, you know, don't know if you've seen this.
That's probably right. We recently rewatched Apollo 13. It happened to be on the television, and you know, I remember watching it when I was young, thinking, "Oh, this is amazing! Look at what mankind can achieve." And you watch it now, you think it's amazing they ever worked. You know, it's like the Apollo program was really on the rickety edge. I know they did the best they could for what they had at the time, given the time budget that they had to work in. But goodness me, it's
But and you know, if you go back to like the early days of aviation, most planes were single pilot. In fact, I think the first planes only could hold one person. So you can think about that from a training of you know, a pilot standpoint. It's all theoretical until you're like in the plane and you're by yourself. You can't talk to anybody, and you're having to figure it out in real time. Talk about really sink or swim.
Yeah, I suppose there was quite a lot of overlap between sort of early astronauts and test pilots for a similar sort of reason. It's like you're going to have to make these decisions on your own and work it out as you go along, because we don't know exactly how this is going to react.
Yeah, it's definitely on the job training for sure. Like,
so would you go up? Do they have like a command program where, you know, you put enough hours and you can go up to the International Space Station just to make sure everything's okay?
I do not know of a single astronaut that has that history. So if they do have such a program, the number of hours must be so extraordinary that nobody's reached it yet.
I assume human launches are still quite expensive, even though, you know, Crew Dragon's been very successful. That's still, you know, prohibited. You can only do one every couple of months or something like that, just because of the amount of fuel mass it needs.
Yeah, I think SpaceX is charging $55 million per person right now to launch. So, on one hand, very prohibitive, but on the other hand, not completely with beyond reach.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure I would want to give up everything that 55 million could buy for that one trip.
That's true. Just remember when all of those companies started doing their first tickets, and they seemed so expensive back then, but of course in today's money they're very cheap. So we'll just keep having to adjust our expectations.
Yeah. And I got a question. Are you familiar with what SpaceX is doing with their Starship?
Well, I know the sort of rough principles of it. Obviously, it's a successor to the Falcon 9 design. It's designed to obviously go beyond lower Earth orbit, which I know they did do with the Falcon 9 Heavy, but it's not exactly the same thing, is it? I know it's completely different sort of design. The engine is completely different. It's got that closed cycle, you know, engine that we haven't seen for a very long time, trying to be extremely fuel efficient. They're going for the stainless steel, try and reduce their costs. So it's exciting. It's interesting that it's not sort of a derivative of Falcon 9. It seems to be completely new again. The one that interests me is Rocket Lab, which seem to be making a business out of moving into the space that SpaceX vacates. So obviously SpaceX started off with the Falcon 1 and very quickly left that sort of microsatellite market, and Rocket Lab came in with the Electron, sort of picked up. And now they're sort of doing the same. SpaceX starts looking beyond the Falcon 9. Rocket Lab are looking at their Neutron to sort of, you know, do that market instead. So it's interesting how these companies go.
Yeah, Rocket Labs is amazing. I mean, they're only the second private company to actually put something in orbit, and they're out of New Zealand, which is really amazing. I mean, how does New Zealand compare to the UK in terms of people and economy?
Yeah, much more. I mean, all the British launches back from when Britain had its own independent space program, were in Australia, I think. So I guess not too far away. But I think Britain's the only company to have developed a satellite launch capability and then never used it.
Wow.
All those patents, I think, got sold to Ariane Space. It was cheaper to use American Scout missiles rather than to continue developing our own, I think. So I don't know whether any of that, I know obviously New Zealand and Australia are much further away than we always think they are, but I don't know whether there's been any sort of direction of travel from there. It's cool. I know that Rocket Lab obviously launched a few from New Zealand, but they're also building up an American space complex as well. So they've got a NASA mission this year, don't they? The Lunar Gateway, the Capstone.
That's right.
Mission.
Yeah. And then also, I think they have a mission to Venus they want to do. And
yeah, I know.
I think, they also want to do some launches for the US military, which means they had to become a US company. So now technically they're a US company.
Venus is always very exciting. It's always been this funny thing that the West looked to Mars and the East looked to Venus. And that's just the way the missions went. I don't know whether it's because obviously we can land on Mars, we can't really land on Venus. But it'd be great to have more missions to Venus because it's so close. And it's got such interesting chemistry. And actually, there's a lot of resources on Venus if we can work out how to get them out of them. The kinds of things we could build, we could make use of Venus, would be brilliant.
That atmosphere, though, seems really, really difficult.
Get past the acid, obviously.
I guess you have like a glass spaceship just to get you through.
Yeah.
Kind of interesting. Well, Jason, I know we talked about a lot of things, but was there anything that you wanted to talk about, or did you have any questions for me?
I wish you most fantastic luck on your first day on the new job. I'm so pleased for you. You get to live the dream. No, I just look forward to hearing about what you're learning about in the future, and hope you keep us all up to date.
I definitely look forward to doing that. And sometime I want to come to York, maybe in a year or two. So
absolutely.
So to meet up then.
Absolutely, always welcome.
And sometime you have to come to Houston and
I will.
The Johnson Space Center.
So I mentioned I'd seen the Smithsonian Air and Space, and I've done it. Actually, I forgot to mention the Kennedy Space Center was one I did before, because I was in Orlando for a conference, and we took a day out to go to Kennedy Space Center, and that's quite a special experience. So I'd love to see Houston as well, and see the exhibits there, because it's just amazing to see this stuff up close. Even Enterprise on the Intrepid is amazing to see. That one never even made it to space. It's just it's the odd one out.
Yeah, I think they used it for some drop flights, drop testing on
a glider demonstrator, wasn't it?
And we have the 747 that was used for that here in Houston as well.
That's good. No, I'd love to see it. Hopefully in a couple of years I'll be able to bring Daniel.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic. Then we'll have to have him meet an astronaut and see how they do their training and that whole thing. That'd be, and save some time to go down to South Texas and see Starship as well, and what Elon Musk is doing there. So, it says my internet connection's unstable.
Yeah, sorry, we buffered a little bit there. Sorry, I didn't catch that last bit.
Oh yeah, and save some time to go to South Texas and see Starship and what Elon Musk is doing down there. If you come to Houston, we'll have to go down there too. So, well, good deal. Well, I'll hope you have a good rest of your day, and I look forward to staying in touch.
Yes, you too, Nathan. Have a great day.
Okay, bye-bye.